Welcome to the Investors Syndicate Podcast, where we interview real estate investors and entrepreneurs, giving away the playbook to help you guys on your road to success. And we got my very special sensei, Bob Kim, in the house today. Now, Bob was one of the first people who actually held my hand through the process of getting started. When I first decided that I wanted to plant the stake in the ground and become a real estate investor, I reached out to Bob because he ran a local meetup here in Columbia, South Carolina. So to this day, I call him Sensei Bob. But without further ado, Bob, welcome.
Well, thank you, Ben. I think you give me too much credit. I mean, that you took everything, and you took the matters into your own hand. We had a really nice lunch and whatnot, if I recall, and you just literally took what we discussed and just ran with it yourself. Not many people do that. So thank you for those kind words, but they're very tough to live up to. So
I appreciate you, man. I've always seen Bob as having a go-giver mentality, right? Like he's always giving away information. He's always helping new investors, not going out to lunch, always picking up the tab, right? And just giving away the blueprint. Like, hey, this is what you need to do. And then accountability, right? Like Bob would literally get in the car sometimes in the middle of the night and go help people put up bandit signs.
Oh, that's fun. I just like to see people succeed. One of the statistics that really hit me is nationwide, Ben, less than of the people who get into real estate the way we do it. I'm not talking about the people who already have money like Donald Trump and stuff, but the way we do it with no money, no credit, etc., only about 3% ever succeed. 97% fall about the wayside. So it'd be nice. There's plenty of deals out there for everybody. So I'd like to see that success rate much higher, at least in our markets.
Yeah.
So.
I love it, man. So I'd like to really rewind the tapes a little bit, and let's talk about where Bob first discovered the vehicle of real estate. Like, what was that turning point in your journey where you're like, wow, real estate looks amazing, sounds amazing, I'm going to dive in?
Well, I'd heard, this is back in like the 80s, mid to late 80s. I remember my mom was actually a realtor way back when, and of course, we didn't know things like, now it's funny because my training's as an engineer, you're not like a finance person.
Yeah.
But we didn't know anything about, return on investment and stuff like that. I figured cash flow, is fine. And my mom actually sold me a house and I put 40% down, so obviously cash flow, and I thought this is great. But when I finally started taking real estate seriously, it was one house in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. And when I started taking real estate serious, I held about maybe 15 years, and then I sold it. My annual return was a little less than 1.2% a year. And when I finally knew what numbers to look for, and I said, maybe this isn't such a good thing. I could just put in a money market and done better.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but fast forward a bit, I was doing research on the Savannah River site as an engineer down in Aiken, South Carolina, and I was pretty tired of my job. I'm sure most people can relate to them having a boss they're not particularly fond of. The work, I did a lot of lab work, and wasn't particularly, adventuresome or anything. And anyway, what happened was around that time, the Department of Energy was who really ran that site. And there are budget cuts everywhere. Now, my job was safe because I was a lowly paid lab engineer, basically, okay? And I started looking back into real estate, and not just the landlord thing. I began looking into, and back then we didn't have like Google and YouTube like we have now. But I began looking into the whole house flipping aspect and whatnot, and they didn't have like HGTV shows and stuff like that. And anyway, I picked up a book on wholesaling at, I think it was it a Books A Million? I can't recall which bookstore it was. It might have been a Barnes & Noble. And I wholesaled my first house, and the total work to wholesale it was about 45 minutes of total work, and I got about a third of my annual salary in about 45 minutes worth of work. And I was walking out of the attorney's office, check in hand, and I was like, did this really happen? I said, crap. Now, back then I was single, really no responsibilities except to myself, So I said, heck with it. I just told my boss to take her job and stick it, and I just went off on my own.
Wow.
So, and then there are some rough spots, because that's in the middle of 2005 when I quit my job. As you know, shortly thereafter, we hit the 2007-2008 recession,
Oh, yeah.
where I didn't learn from how to handle that. So that was a little rough.
So where did you first hear about wholesaling? Like, where did you hear the buzzword? Did you go to a conference? What cued you to walk in a bookstore and say, I want to find a book about wholesaling?
I think what happened was, that's basically what it was I was looking for a different life, if you will, outside of engineering, because I've been an engineer all my life. And I started looking into real estate itself, and then this whole concept of wholesaling came up, and I was like, okay, what the heck's wholesaling? Okay, and the first course I actually bought it's called, because it's affordable, it's cheap. Okay, what can I say? It was actually by a guy named Steve Cook. It was called Wholesaling Houses for Fast Cash. Okay, and it literally was just like a notebook on how to wholesale.
Wow.
And all these great ideas. And then started saying, get involved with the local REIA, and then I started coming up to the one here in Columbia, and the one that I started coming up to is no longer around, but that's when I started getting into wholesaling. So that's how I heard about it and started digging into it.
Wow, that's awesome. So once you started getting your feet wet, got your first deal done, that made you a believer, right? You're like, holy cow, this is possible. It's real. It's tangible. I have a $1,000, $10,000 check in my hand. If I could just multiply this 2 or 3 times, I can replace my current job. Wow.
That's
right?
correct.
What did the next several years from that point look like? Like what did you learn in the early stages of failing forward and having to build your business from the ground up?
Okay, as you know, I quit my job in the middle of 2005, and I'm motoring along here, and I started out as actually a rehabber, and then with the occasional wholesale after that first wholesale, and I was doing okay. And what happened was I didn't know how to find good contractors and whatnot. And there's a saying: if you pay peanuts, you're gonna hire monkeys. Okay, so that I was trying to be cheap, and that was a mistake. So I was hiring unlicensed handymen and stuff like that, and it was like babysitting. And Ben, you see, I used to have a full head of hair before I started rehabbing.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, and anyway, I also learned, I fell under the illusion. Success is a lousy teacher. Bill Gates said that. It fools you into thinking that you can't go wrong. And as you know, what happened shortly thereafter is the 2007-2008 recession. And I took a beating during that because I had a lot of money out there, and I didn't realize, maybe I should pull back a little bit and hold some in reserves. And we discussed a little bit earlier today. I see that kind of happening right now as well.
Yeah.
So the difference is this time I know how to handle it. Okay,
yeah.
So.
Interesting time in the market right now.
It is.
I mean, shit has kind of hit the fan. Stock market's plummeted.
Right.
Crypto getting destroyed. Hasn't fully hit the real estate market yet, but you can the institutions, the lenders are tightening up. We're starting to see the hedge funds cut back a little bit, right? Raise their cap rates. But yeah, it could get messy.
Yeah, I just saw a Facebook post that a mortgage broker is offering remember no doc loans?
Yep.
They're offering no doc loans in like 26 different states, and I saw this all before 2005, 2006. And actually, I only ever had one mortgage in my own name. It was actually a no doc loan, and fortunately I paid it off, but it was a bit of a drag on me. And this was a mortgage I got. I was actually hospitalized. It was in 2007. I was actually hospitalized, so I had people sign for me. And I remember the mortgage broker saying, "Bob, I got to put down here how much you weigh." He's on the phone in Augusta, and so he goes, "Bob, I got to put down on the form here how much you make. Just tell me 50,000 or something. Just make something up." I was like, I can't believe this. He's not going to verify any of this, and I got a mortgage that easily.
Wow.
So it looks like we're going back to that again. So
that's crazy.
Yeah.
So what did you experience firsthand in the middle of last recession?
Oh, yeah, I was holding on to houses a lot longer, and a couple of my rehab flips that were supposed to be actually turned into long-term rentals, and they were never meant to be. I did face some cash flow issues, but remember, I was single back then. One thing I did was, when I was a poor student in college, I became very creative with buying cheap macaroni and cheese and ramen noodles and living off of them, and I pretty much went back to that. Fortunately, I didn't have a whole lot of. I wasn't in that lifestyle. I got to have the biggest, best thing. In fact, if you look at my car now, okay, it's like a 12-year-old car. I'm going to run that thing into the ground. I'm not big on these frills. What does Rich Dad call it? Doodads. I'm not big on the doodads. Okay, so I think that's probably what saved my hide. Now I still lost quite a bit of money during that time, but I think it's pretty much saved my hide back then.
Don't load up on liabilities, right? Stack the asset column.
That's right. And have your assets, have your money generating assets pay for your doodads, if you will. Too many people put it on credit, and that's a bad idea.
Absolutely. So let's talk about your business and your real estate investing strategy in the middle of this recession, right? If this go around looks anything like last time, there can be some nuggets that can be pulled out of that.
Okay, well, what I learned also is in South Carolina, I can't speak about other states. In South Carolina, it's relatively, and I'm going to say relatively with a grain of salt, easy to buy houses by some creative techniques. One of them is called subject to. Okay, it's basically an informal loan assumption. You're basically and bluntly saying, you're telling the house seller, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I want you to deed me your house and leave the mortgage in your name. Okay, if done right, it's legal, and frankly, it puts no liability on you, as the investor. So, and it's a lot, in my opinion, it's a lot easier to do than these rehabs and stuff. Because you don't have to babysit contractors and whatnot. The idea is what you're doing is it's usually an owner-occupant that needs to sell. What you're doing is you're sliding them out of the house and you're putting someone else into the house on the existing financing. So I really like that now. It's, in my opinion, it's the easiest and quickest way to make a buck in real estate, other than wholesaling.
So, looking back at your current portfolio, and we've had a lot of discussions and stuff. Now, you built pretty much your whole real estate holdings through the subject to method, right?
Most of it. Yeah. Some were paid off pure cash and whatnot. And the only mortgage I did have in my name, I actually sold one of my more problematic rentals and paid that one off. But most of them are held subject to, and they're sales, but in reality, they're rentals.
Yeah. So your subject to strategy: acquire the property, right? Existing financing stays with the seller, right? Property is deeded into your name. What is your exit strategy? Are you holding that as a rental, or are you wrapping that and financing that to somebody on the backside as an owner finance?
It's technically what you're saying there. It's really more of a wrap. See, the problem in South Carolina is when an owner-occupant, which is how I acquired most of them, when an owner-occupant leaves the house, and once the county figures that out, property taxes at least triple,
right?
Sometimes more. So what I do now is I take a person who wants a home, okay, and obviously you have to pre-qualify them, make sure they're not deadbeats, You put them in and you give them the deed so they're now owner-occupants, okay, and then I tag a mortgage onto that to keep them accountable.
Right.
So you have an owner-occupant in the home so the taxes don't rise, and that's my general model now.
Awesome. And so your goal is to acquire a property that once you wrap it, right, to the new buyer, you have enough cash flow in between that you're making the difference between the mortgage plus taxes, insurance, and whatever this person is paying you, including mortgage, taxes, insurance.
That's
right?
Correct.
What does that number look like? Like, are you aiming for, let's say, $300 a month? What is that magic number for you that it's like, hey, this looks like a good deal on paper?
Ideally, you want, in my opinion, if you can, sometimes you can't, okay, at least $150 a month. Okay, but realistically, because remember, you're now a note holder. Okay, now it doesn't always occur, but in theory, once you put a note on as a second, a wraparound, if you will, theoretically you should just be able to sit at home. It's mailbox money.
Right.
In reality, as you know, sometimes you have to go out there and do a little prodding.
Yeah.
Okay. But at this point here, there are three ways to get paid in that model. The first one is the non-refundable down payment by the person you put in. That's payday
Right.
number one. Payday number two is the cash flow you're discussing. And payday number three is when they finally refinance out of the existing mortgage and get their own financing. Okay. In reality, that third payday very rarely occurs. Okay. So my money is obtained from the upfront as
Yep.
well as what little bit of cash flow is there. So it's really up to what you want to go for. I mean, I've had properties cash flows as little as like $16 a month. But you know what? Since I'm just a note holder,
Yeah.
just sit back.
How many of those properties have you seen fall into default and actually had to either pursue legal proceedings with it or had to really navigate?
Okay, you're touching on something I'm not proud of. There's a house in North Augusta, and I did lose that to foreclosure. I bought subject to. That was before this is how I found out that the property tax at least triples when the owner occupant moves out. Here's the key: when you do something like that, and I felt pretty bad about that, but my wife told me, she said, "But did you actually provide some benefit?" And I thought about it. This lady called me 4 times. I had to explain to her, "Mrs. Harris, you have to understand, okay, you're deeding me your house, and if I can't make the payments, you can still go to foreclosure." And she just wanted out because she was already, she was about to fall into pre-foreclosure to begin with. So I ended up buying her house subject to and giving her a couple $1,000s, and she'd come in from California, so she went back out to California. And anyway, so what happened was the property taxes tripled on me, so I went into negative cash flow there, and I had to go through. Now, if you don't put an end buyer in the house and you just lease option to them, they're called tenant buyers. So I had to go through 3 different tenant buyers, and in the end, I just couldn't hold on to it. So one thing I did discover, though, okay, even though I still had the deed, I should say my entity still had the deed, because we didn't sign anything with the mortgage company, nothing happened to us. So, and again, it's not something I'm proud of, but it's something that's how it works.
Right.
Okay, and as long as you disclose everything to your seller, okay, I mean the good, the bad, and the ugly, you have it in writing. And what I do now is I even video record either me or my attorney saying, "You understand the mortgage is still in your name. You understand it's not paid off, blah, blah, blah," okay? Then you should be good to go. And just let the seller know this could go wrong. And if they still want to do business with you, help them out the best you can. Don't bamboozle them and say, "I promise to do this." Don't make promises you might not be able to keep.
Yeah.
That's what I learned.
So in what unique circumstances would you say that this subject to model is best fitting, right? Obviously in a down market, probably with a seller that's got some degree of distress, right?
I'd say absolutely. Don't get me wrong. If someone is willing, let's say for example you have a house worth say $500,000, and let's say they have like a $1,000 mortgage balance left, and they still want to sell it to the subject to. Don't say, "Oh no, there's too much equity." Take it. Okay, less money out of your pocket. But at the same time, realistically, it is people who are mostly leveraged out, where there's not enough equity to be able to cash wholesale or cash rehab it to the end buyer. Now, in that case, something like that. Let's say you're a rehabber. You could do something called split funding, where you give them a little bit of money up front, and then the rest upon resale. Stuff like that. But you just can't throw cash at something like that.
Yeah.
And hope to make money. So.
A lot of different creative ways out there.
It
So
is.
let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about what you do with the Midlands REIA and your goal in helping newer investors grow and get involved in the industry. What inspired that passion to start helping out newer investors?
Okay, do you really want to hear?
Yeah, let's hear it.
It's not really the best story. Again, this is something I'm not proud of. There was another REIA here that Midlands REIA actually broke off of. It was actually the one I first joined in the Columbia area. And what happened was it went through that recession, the 2007-2008 one, and I still kept coming to the meetings. The membership in that one dropped off badly, and the owner of that one wanted to reinvigorate it, and he asked me for help, running it. And at the time, his wife was starting up some one antique store in Chapin and one in Prosperity. Okay, and it turned out he started letting me just run the whole thing while he would work with his wife on the antique things. And he just wanted to sell things over and over again. You know, I mean, he'd bring in people to sell things every meeting. And obviously, since I'm out there presenting things, I didn't get paid a penny for this. You know, I had no ownership in the REIA. Okay, I even paid a membership due of $200 if I recall. And but I kept presenting these, and obviously when things go bad with whoever's selling, because the original owner didn't own any of the products, okay, or services, people would look at me and I'd be the bad guy because I was the one who presented at the owner's command.
Yeah.
You know? And it got to a point where I said, this really blows. It's not what I really expected from a REIA. I want it to be educational. And also, people are looking at me when things go wrong. Okay, so I just broke off, and that's how Midlands REIA formed. I said I want to do it my way. And now the Richland Library, we spoke about that at lunch. Okay, the Richland Library is one of the best library systems in the nation. I remember I was talking to somebody who works there back in 2000. He said back in 2014 or 15, they got like a $70 million grant to renovate the whole library, and that's when they started becoming one of the best in the nation. What it is you have all these resources. The people there, the reference librarians are amazing. Okay, so when people say, in fact, I've had a couple people say, "Do you offer mentoring?" I say, "No, we're reference librarians." Okay, there are even local mentors here who charge like $25,000-$30,000. I think that's a bunch of crap. Okay,
Yeah.
You don't need a whole lot of money to get started in wholesaling, subject twos, or whatever. Okay, you need a lot of tenacity. I tell people, these gurus who make you pay like $25,000, $30,000 or whatnot, they want you to put on your credit cards, or they'll get you some cheap business credit. And remember that 97% failure rate I told you about? When, not just if, but when people start dropping out, the guru still has their money and they have to make credit card payments or whatever. I tell people, you don't need a lot of money to do this business or even get started. Earn it first, and then you decide if you want to pay for this guru's coaching.
Yeah.
At least you'll have the money in hand. You're not putting it on credit that you make payments for.
Absolutely.
So that's what I believe. And that's kind of the philosophy of Midlands REIA. I really want to model it after the Richland Library. You know, that'd be a dream of mine.
Yeah, so basically you kind of act as like the conduit, right? You're the person that could point somebody in the right direction to link them up with the right resource, the right mentor, the right system, the right tool, in order to empower them with what they would need to go in and be successful.
Yeah, you got it right on the head there. You know, I mean, I obviously don't know everything about the business. Like we were talking a little bit about like cryptocurrencies and, you know, the metaverse and whatnot. Buying real estate in the metaverse. Okay, that just still blows my mind.
Yeah.
I know little to nothing about that. Okay, so if people said, okay, you know, what's this metaverse thing? Well, I'll be honest with you. You'd be the first one I'd say, you know, you might want to talk to Ben Lover about this.
Yeah. For sure.
So I'll tell people, if I don't know something, I'll tell them I don't know, but this person can give you a whole education in it.
Sure. So let's speak to the brand new investor, brand new wholesaler that's either just discovered what wholesaling is and they want to learn more, or they've already, you know, jumped in there, they've decided they want to commit to it, right, but they haven't really figured out where to go. What is the best piece of advice that you could give somebody brand new in this industry?
I'd first say there's a bunch of information out there on YouTube and Google. Learn the very basics. I say go to YouTube University. I mean, always have a YouTube video on it. Okay.
Yeah.
In fact, I know at least one person. He came out of prison, and that's how he learned it. Okay. But also, you have to have tenacity. You have to have perseverance. If you don't have that, well, you know, all the education in the world's not going to help you.
Yeah.
You know? So just have faith that it works. Okay. And then once you start getting into, even wholesaling is pretty much the same area, except for Maryland. Maryland's a terrible state to invest in. But wholesaling is pretty much the same everywhere. So maybe wholesale a deal or two. Now, if you want to start learning the specifics of where you are, learn from a local person or a local REIA.
Yeah.
Okay? Midlands REIA, to be an actual member, is not free. That's why I always tell people. Some people say, "Oh, I want to sign up for Midlands REIA, and where do I pay annual dues?" I say, "Look, there are free REIAs out there. Okay, go to them first. You might be able to learn for free why? I mean, it's not, the membership isn't much, but you know what? It's maybe a couple pizzas, okay?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
why not save the money if you can save it and learn it for free elsewhere? And ultimately, if you decide you want to join Midlands, we'd love to have you. We're not trying to chase you off. I just want you to get your money's worth. You know,
Absolutely.
So, that's kind of my philosophy.
I love it. Let's talk about the regulations, right? South Carolina's tried cracking down. NAR, right, has introduced this new quote-unquote law, if you will, in their code, trying to illegalize wholesale.
Okay, in my experience, real estate law, and again, this is personal experience, real estate law in South Carolina is not enforced well at all. Okay, I think people are putting a lot of, the people who really have anything to fear are the people with licenses, in my opinion. Okay, because you could be potentially jeopardizing that. But even then, in my experience, even then, they're not in trouble, really. Okay, I can cite, and I won't give names. I'll tell you off camera who it is. Okay, I can cite several real estate agents who have been brought up on orders, and LLR, the Labor Licensing and Regulation entity. Okay, they basically said, yes, you are guilty. Actually, the Real Estate Commission said, yes, you are guilty. Yes, we're suspending your license, but we are suspending our suspension of your license. Basically, go on and keep doing what you're doing. Okay, I won't mention the name here. And as you know, when you do a search on a realtor, you get Google reviews, and this realtor has 5-star reviews on Google, and no one ever thinks to look under LLR for the orders.
Yeah.
Okay, so real estate law, they really have to, in my opinion, I wish they'd do a better job enforcing it, if they really want to go that route.
Yeah.
Okay, we're talking about the wholesaling thing that the Real Estate Commission came out with back in February. Okay, they're saying basically, as you know, the whole basis of wholesaling is you put a property under contract and it gives you equitable interest to be able to market that before you actually close on it.
Correct.
Okay, that's the issue. Is the Real Estate Commission has decided that that equitable interest is not owner's interest, and they say you need owner's interest to market a property without having any ownership, or I should say, before closing on it. Okay, so, and they say they can issue cease and desist letters. Well, a few things hit me is it's not a law yet. Okay, so I until it becomes a law, in my opinion, and again, just my opinion, I just keep doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
All right, now they say they can issue cease and desist letters. Okay, basically they threaten a $10,000 fine, if I recall.
Yeah.
Okay, I've never gotten one myself, but I know a guy down in Aiken. He's gotten several of them. He just crumples them and throws them away. Okay, so there's not a whole lot of teeth to those either. Okay, I hate to say it.
Yeah. No,
So
you're right.
that's how the law works in South Carolina. I shouldn't say that's not, the law is there, but for whatever reason, the powers that be don't seem to want to enforce it. You know, so I don't understand.
Yeah.
You know, so
It's
anyway,
interesting.
if it becomes a law and starts to become an issue, then I guess we just have to cross that bridge then.
Yeah.
So now, to help offset that, in our members area on our website, we have a list of cash buyers with phone numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so, which by the way, I need to add you actually. So,
Absolutely.
So if it does become a law and if they start enforcing it, something like that, if you don't have your own buyers list, I just say, guys, log in, start going down the list and start making calls. Okay, so anyway,
Yeah.
that's
It's
one way to
interesting
offset it.
stuff. The next few years, we're going to have to navigate and, different, we've seen similar things popping up in different states, right? For us doing a virtual model, it's good to be aware of, the buzz and what's happening in different areas, different locations, but creative real estate investors are always going to find a way to operate, right? And operate legally and morally, right?
Absolutely.
At the end of the day, that's what's most important. Being a person of your word, right? Being a person of integrity, following the law, and then treating people the way that you want to be treated.
That's right. That's right. Now that's the issue, Ben, is because, and the thing is this, okay, even with conventional real estate, you can have scumbags ripping people off, okay, but it's especially with creative real estate, it can be especially prevalent, okay, because people don't know how to treat it.
Yeah.
That's the problem, is the scumbags that give the ethical people like us a bad name.
Right.
That's the problem.
It is. It is. A lot of different ways that you can navigate through a transaction. I was talking with one of my buddies. He's like, man, whenever purchasing a house, if it really came down to it, purchase the house under a land contract, pay the seller $500, $1,000 down payment. Technically, you own the property. The deed might not be recorded, right? But per the land contract, you have legal ownership of that property. Turn around and sell it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true because actually, if you go to the tax assessors in Richland, Lexington, Aiken County, or wherever, okay, even just a land contract, if you don't have the deed and you're living in the home, they will still, now they have to look at the contract first to make sure it mentions rent, it doesn't mention rent anywhere or tenant or anything like that. You can actually get owner-occupied tax status even though you don't have the deed if it's on a land contract.
Really?
So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, in fact, I'm trying to think of who told me that. I think Carlos Barrera, you know Carlos,
yeah.
Okay, he does that quite often. So I think he's the one who told me about that. And I verified. I called the Lexington County tax assessor, and he basically said, yeah, we have to look at the contract and make sure it doesn't mention things like rent or anything that implies a tenancy. And we will give owner-occupied tax status, but they have to do it on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah.
So
interesting. Well, let's talk about the next several years, right? And obviously, the market is turning. We touched on at the beginning of this interview. What is the best way for a full-time investor to navigate these interesting times? Like, what do you suggest? Obviously, cut down on your overhead, right?
Yeah, debt's the enemy.
Debt is the enemy.
Yeah, I recently came back from a. I saw two cases. I came back from one of my, and I don't use the word lightly, mentor. Okay, generally speaking, most mentors out there are a bunch of crap. Okay, this one is one of my true mentors, and anyway, she is doing the big commercial stuff. She's actually developing a subdivision in Branson, Missouri, which is supposed to be the next Orlando. Okay. And it's a subdivision of vacation rentals, okay? And she's the one who told me expect a recession worse than 2007, 2008, okay? And now before her, there's another big name guru out of Jacksonville, Florida. If I mention the name, I'm sure you know, okay? He tried the same thing of all these developments and stuff before the 2007 recession. He got slam dunked badly. He lost like $488 million. And if I know him, the way he structures things, it wasn't even his money, it's his investors' money.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the lady I'm telling you about, my mentor in Ocala, Florida, who's doing the same thing now, I asked her, I said, what are you doing different from him? And she said, this guy's also a mentor of hers. In fact, he's the one who got her started. She said he loves leverage. She said, I hate leverage. I pay things down as quickly as I can. My subdivision out in Branson has very little leverage on it, okay? So she says, that's what I'm doing different than him. So the people now who are like, I've never really liked the BRRRR strategy in South Carolina. Okay, don't get me wrong. I can be wrong. If it's working for you successfully, keep doing it. I'm not going to argue with success. But at the same time, that's leverage, okay? I saw, before it was called BRRRR, people had been doing that for decades,
Yeah.
okay? And what I saw in the 2007 and 2008 recession is people who did that. They'd refinance out, buy another property, refinance, buy another property. They were stringing them along, and when the recession hit, all their houses toppled like dominoes, okay? But also, their personal residences, and I'm starting to see this now again. Use the equity in your home. Buy an investment property with it, something like that. I saw people lose their homes then, okay? So in times like this, Ben, I think leverage is not a good thing.
Yeah.
So.
Over leverage, definitely.
Absolutely. Right. Unless it's not, I hate to say it, unless it's not in your name. Remember the subject to technique, for example, okay? Let's say I buy a house from somebody who's going into pre-foreclosure or is in pre-foreclosure. Okay, obviously they're going to lose the home anyway. Maybe I can stop that at least for a little while. Maybe I can stop it completely. Okay, obviously that house is leveraged out, okay? But the mortgage isn't in my name. And in the end, and again, this is fully disclosed to the seller what might happen. Okay, in the end, if I lose the house to foreclosure like I did in North Augusta, okay, you're not hurt by it. So it is leveraged out, but the loan's not in your name to begin with. So
sub 2, baby.
You know, just minimize your own personal and legal liabilities.
Yes.
So anyway, just a few, for what it's worth, my 2 cents worth, maybe that's what it was worth, right?
Yeah.
2 cents.
Absolutely, man. Well, Bob, where's the best place for people to find you?
Oh, wow.
Social media?
Well, yeah, social media. I'm usually, now, if you mean physically, I'm usually sitting at home with the cats in my underwear in the easy chair. But
that's Bob. Bob Kim.
So, I can be found at Midlands REIA.com. Just look under the contact tab. Or better yet, contact Ben. Ben knows how to reach me.
There you go.
Ben and Andy behind the camera, they know how to reach me.
Boom, boom.
So.
Bob would always joke around at the meetings like his cat's like his business partner, right? So when he's explaining like the method of wholesaling is like, look, you get this property under contract and you're, lining up the inspections, or your partners and your cash buyers, anything else. Well, your partner could be anybody. In my case, my partner could be my cat, right? But that sticks out in my mind like very, very clear, man. Just those times.
The cat has better handwriting than me.
Yeah, that's crazy. Crazy thing, huh? A couple other things that stood out. I remember that first time that we met at Panera, right, where you took me out to lunch and you're like, hey, this is what you should do. There was one saying that stood out to me more than anything that I still hold on to this day. Let me see if I could find it. You need to be able to think like a motivated seller, right? Put yourself yourself in their shoes, put yourself in their unique situation, right?
Yeah.
And then you took it a step further. You said, look, if you learn how to market and get your message out there to motivated sellers, and then you make offers, you're going to be successful in this industry.
I think it's a lot better to find the motivated seller first and then back into what property they own than it is to look for properties and make offers hoping that there's a motivated seller behind it.
Yeah.
And now any property is a good deal at the right price. The right price might be the seller actually has to pay you. I know that sounds kind of ludicrous, but that was my first house in Aiken. Seller had to pay me $4,000 to buy it from him.
Yeah.
So now he was a banker in Charlotte. So
that stuff happens.
Yeah, it happens.
It does. Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So
someone knows a little bit more than you're actually willing to pay, but that house is so much of a burden
that's right.
that seller's literally willing to come out of pocket, dump some cash on the table in order to get out.
Absolutely. So, and one it's interesting because we've all read Rich Dad, okay? And the one thing I remember Robert Kiyosaki, the author, saying, when it comes to tenacity and perseverance, he said, you can always give up. Why give up now? And that stuck with me. I said, dang, he's right.
Yeah, that's good. Awesome, man. Well, it's been fun. I appreciate you coming and sharing.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. We'll have to get this out to the Midlands peeps. You guys better listen to this, man.
I'm gonna try to have Ben talk August or September if you're available.
Yeah.
Okay. We'd love to talk about some of the cutting edge stuff you're doing with cryptocurrency, the metaverse, your own real estate wholesaling, your connections to the hedge funds.
Yes.
I'm sure wholesalers especially want to hear that.
Absolutely.
But thank you, Ben.
It's been a pleasure, man.
I appreciate it.
Boom!